The moral of the story here is that if you want to lead for results, your success will be almost entirely dependent upon the talent you're able to build into your team. If you're a regular listener of the No Bullshit Leadership podcast, you'll know that I speak frequently about talent in a whole range of different contexts. But the word is so overused these days that it's hard to differentiate between the real work of nurturing and developing your people with the more mundane aspects of running a business. There's a number of critical components to understanding and managing the talent that you have. And you won't know who your real talent is unless you implement a robust process across the whole team. Now, sometimes, as busy as we are, we rationalize that it's easier just to leave talent growth to happen organically. We tell ourselves that all our people are excellent and we avoid the hard work of leadership. But if you want your team to perform at its peak, you can't do that without a strong focus on performance and talent management. I'm going to start today with a quick summary of a great study from McKinsey before going into a little detail about the leadership psychology of talent management. Then I'm going to outline the 5 distinct elements of the talent management process, which I'll cap off with a few tips for where to start with talent management, no matter where you find yourself today. Now, believe it or not, CEOs think they're doing pretty well. I came across a McKinsey article from 2019, so obviously it's pre-COVID, but it was titled Confronting Overconfidence in Talent Strategy, Management and Development. The article cited a wide-ranging survey on talent management, and this found that CEOs and heads of HR were really bullish about their talent management strategy and performance, but others in the organisation weren't anywhere near as positive. Now, talent management's one of those things that's hard to measure, so it can be quite subjective. Amongst the key findings, most interestingly, the biggest impediment to successful talent management is the leaders themselves. They don't value talent management, and they don't value clear structures, roles and responsibilities in order to streamline the work. They don't even believe in the concept of evaluating people performance, only business results. They don't value continuous improvement practices, and they lack a culture of feedback. Talent takes a back seat as leaders say, hey, I've got more important things to worry about. And this is a classic case of the leaders at the very top believing their own bullshit. They overestimate the execution capability of the organisation when it comes to implementing the processes that they've put in place. They may even kid themselves that there's rigorous discipline behind the outputs from their talent management processes, even when it doesn't have the buy-in of the leaders who are supposedly driving it. Look, McKinsey also cites some research they carried out with the Confederation of British Industry, or CBI. It found that if companies in the UK moved up just 1 decile in people performance relative to their peers, the resulting boost in labour productivity would be worth £110 billion per annum. Now, this speaks to the entire talent cycle. How do we attract the best people we can using our brand and our employee value proposition? How do we filter the talent through our selection and recruitment processes? What do we do to develop and nurture the talent once we have it? How do we differentiate between people throughout the performance management cycle? How do we ensure that our best people are working on the most important things? How do we tell the difference between someone who's really delivering and someone who just talks a good game? How do we promote the right people, not just those who are carbon copies of ourselves? Now, it's a lot to think about, right? But hey, if you're a leader, that's kind of your job. I'm going to focus down on how to manage your talent once you've acquired it. You have to have not just the processes, but the culture to rigorously manage the talent you've got. This means your leaders have to value their people and to be comfortable in differentiating between those who perform and those who don't. Now, this sounds pretty obvious, but it can be more of an issue than you might think. I remember going into a role many years ago, and one of the first things I did was to ask all of the general managers who reported to me for a snapshot of their leadership talent. While most people did this as diligently as they could, albeit rather optimistically, there was one woman who refused to play ball. Now, in a rather passive-aggressive way, of course. When I asked her to rate her performance of her 30 or so leaders, she insisted that they were all performing to a high standard. Now, looking at her division, this wasn't true, self-evidently. So I sent her back to rethink it after giving her some gentle guidance. But she came to me a week later with exactly the same story. All the leaders in my division are performing really well, and I can't get a struck match between any of them. Needless to say, I replaced her as quickly as the organisational processes would allow. And I brought in an external leader who I knew would at least have a crack. So your first step is to make sure that every leader below you in the hierarchy is willing to do the hard work of performance management. And anyone who's not is going to show themselves fairly quickly. Then you've got a choice to make. Now, my strong view is that any leader who isn't committed to growing and developing their people's talent and capability simply shouldn't be there. You'll probably have to make some hard calls here about what to do with those people. If you land on the soft side and choose to leave those leaders in place, well, that's absolutely your prerogative. But just know that if you do that, you'll never get the uplift in productivity and performance that you actually know deep down is possible. The moral of the story here is that if you want to lead for results, your success will be almost entirely dependent upon the talent you're able to build into your team. And the higher up you go, the more this becomes the case. If you look at it from your people's perspective, how much better off do you think they would be if you adopted a structured approach to their development and their career planning? Talent management matters. I only have time to give you a quick fly over the top of how to apply talent management processes. Suffice to say that we go into much more detail in our Leadership Beyond the Theory program. We even provide spreadsheet templates to show you how to set up an end-to-end talent management system. There are 5 main components to performance management, and you need all 5 if you want to nail this. I know it sounds like a lot, and you might find it a little daunting at first, but like anything, you should just adopt a fit-for-purpose approach, which you can simply scale to suit your specific circumstances. Now, this particular assessment framework I'm talking about applies to anyone in a leadership role. The assessment for individual contributors is much simpler than this. The first component is leadership behaviours. This is an assessment of how your leaders behave, and it's critical if you want to avoid the talented jerk syndrome. It has to be part of formal performance assessment, and it has to be weighted against other performance criteria. It's relatively easy to find examples of good and bad behaviour in your direct reports, and perhaps you can assess them against the company values. The second component is a broad-based performance assessment. And when I say broad-based, I mean an assessment against all dimensions of leadership performance. This includes, commercial and financial performance, of course, but it also extends to how well they lead, how well they manage, how well they collaborate, and how well they set personal and team standards. This is all about how each leader performs in their day job. To what extent do they meet, not meet, or exceed the various aspects of their role? Now, you need a standard template here that applies to all leaders who are operating at the same level. The individual elements of both performance and behaviour assessment can be mapped on a simple 5-point scale. This is going to enable you to put a weighting on each element according to its relative importance, and then you can average the results to come up with a quantitative score. Just bear in mind though, any score should be just a guide rather than a be-all end-all. So don't let your team get into discussions like this. Well, Mary scored a 4.13, but Jeff only scored a 4.10, so Mary is clearly better. You've also got to recognise that you'll have easy and hard markers on your team, so some level of moderation is absolutely going to be required. The third element is key performance indicators, which are normally annual targets that are set to achieve specific objectives. This is the entirety of what many businesses call performance management. There's only one dimension to this assessment. Did the person achieve their KPIs or didn't they? KPIs are useful, but they have all sorts of issues. So as I said, they're pretty one-dimensional, which is why you need to use KPIs in conjunction with a broader performance assessment. Most often, they're not set particularly well. They tend to be super conservative based on an individual nominating something that they're almost certain to achieve. It's also hard for an objective to survive the time frame that's set for it. Now, a lot can change in the 12 plus months between when an objective is set and when it's delivered. And even though they're often tied to organisational compensation, it's difficult to link the performance payment to outcomes that genuinely deliver value. The fourth element is the 9 box. This is where you map your people on a grid to compare their performance and their potential. It's called the 9 box because there are 9 squares on this 3 by 3 matrix. Now on the x-axis, the bottom of the grid, you've got performance. Not yet full performance, and exceptional performance. On the y-axis, the side of the grid, you've got potential, mastery, growth, and turn. This lets you create a visual representation of all the leaders who function at the same level. You'll see who's cut out for mastery, so in other words, progression just means learning to do the same job better. Who's cut out for growth, where you think they'll be able to take on a bigger role of similar complexity. And who's likely to turn to the next level. Who's likely to be successful if they get promoted. Now the 9 box serves 3 really important functions. The first is that it enables you to frame an evidence-based discussion about the relative merits of your leadership talent. The second is it provides a historical record of each leader's progress as they move to different boxes over time. And the third is that it enables you on an individual basis to give your leaders feedback about how the organisation views them. And importantly, how that aligns with their ambition. So for example, if someone sees themselves as a strong prospect for promotion, but the organisation's view is they're not a high performer, well, they sort of need to know that. And remember, there is no potential without performance first. The final element of our talent management framework is the individual development plan. And this is where you bring it all together. You design a future roadmap for every individual and agree how they're going to progress their career. Now, this might involve formalised training or stretch assignments or maybe even external coaching and mentoring. People need to know they have a future development path if they have any ambition to progress at all. One of the most common problems I encounter is that performance management outputs don't channel towards that development plan. I've been in organisations where the head of HR runs the performance management process like a star chamber. Individuals are discussed and rated, but they're never actually given feedback. They're either anointed for further advancement or they're punished for perceived shortcomings, with very little evidence required for either case. Now, this can make or break someone's career, at least in that company. But if you give people certainty on how the organisation views their past performance and their future potential, they're going to be much more comfortable in that knowledge, even if it isn't the news that they would have ideally liked to receive. What I've just described in those 5 elements is the complete end-to-end process for performance and talent management of the individual. Every person is assessed holistically on their performance and behaviour with a view to their future career trajectory. They're given clarity and certainty about how they're viewed by their boss, and they have an understanding of the path they need to pursue to develop their own career and to get to the next level. The only other aspect of the performance management cycle from an organisational perspective is the need to understand key roles. Now, this is an important part of talent management because some roles are more important than others. Let's be frank, some roles require a rare level of expertise that incorporates key elements of the company's intellectual property. Some roles are crucial to the day-to-day operations of the business. Other roles, well, they could be easily sourced from the market if you need to, and they present much less risk if, for whatever reason, someone can no longer perform that job. Knowing this can help you plan for the future. Which roles do you need to put your best people into? Who holds critical IP in their head that you need to get out of their head and into standardised processes? Who needs to be trained in a particular core discipline to ensure that you don't lose corporate memory? What are the opportunities for cross-skilling to help you mitigate the risk of a single point of failure? Taking what you know about individual talent and capability and marrying that with the organisational view of which skills, capabilities and expertise are required gives you a comprehensive approach to talent acquisition, management and development. There's a lot to take in here. Depending on the company you're in, you may already have a complete, well-worn process for talent management. But equally, some of you in smaller businesses will only have informal or superficial tools. So let's give a few guidelines for where to start. I want to break this up into 3 sections. The first is, where do you start if you already have mature processes in place? The second is, what if you have some processes but talent isn't really part of your culture? And finally, what if you have no formal talent management processes at all? Let's start with a case where your organisation has good, mature talent management processes. Well, of course, you're going to be bound to follow these. So where should you focus your energies? Well, the first place to focus is to understand any gaps that might exist in the process. For example, you may have good individual assessment tools, but no organisational processes like the 9-box mapping that brings it all together. Now, if this is the case, then whatever observations you've made, you need to take those to the person who's responsible for that process. Make a mental note to change it, to make the process more robust as you go up through the ranks. And if there's anything you can do in the short term, within the confines of the existing processes, make sure that you at least do that. So for example, there may not be a formal assessment of each individual's values and behaviours as part of the organisational processes that you use. But it'd be relatively easy for you to build some assessment of values into your one-on-one conversations. Let's have a look at the second case. If your current organisation's talent management processes are a little sketchy or informal. Now in this case, you may need to build it out a little, maybe by creating a fit-for-purpose framework for your own people. In these cases, it's much easier to start at home and do it for yourself first. Then you can take it to the broader organisation and say, hey, look what I've been doing to track and manage my talent. The company might benefit from adopting this approach more widely. Once you've got something in place that you can use in pilot mode, you can lead organisational improvement regardless of what level you're at now. And you'll be earmarking yourself as being a leader for the future who thinks a bit more broadly than just your own narrow portfolio. But don't be too surprised if you get some resistance to this. Some people are going to push back because it looks too much like the hard work of leadership. Others are going to push back because you're showing them up in an area that would be considered as their day job. Finally, the third case, if your current organisation has no formal talent management processes at all, where do you start? The best place to start with anything is with a conversation. If you've got no formal processes, don't try to boil the ocean by implementing a fully functional, holistic talent management framework. Instead, just understand what's important in managing the talent you have and start building those essential conversations into your one-on-ones. All you need to do is cover the 4 target areas that I outlined above: values and behaviours, performance in the day job across the main elements of the role, delivery of the agreed KPIs and objectives, and an individual development plan for how people can progress their careers. Now, until you've got that, the organisational view doesn't make a lot of sense. So you can leave that alone until you reach a greater level of maturity. Just having a few of the more basic elements of a talent management framework is going to vastly improve your people's performance. It'll increase the likelihood that you'll be able to retain the talent you've got. And it's going to enhance your ability to protect the key roles in your business. If you do nothing else, make sure that the types of things that would typically form part of the talent management framework become part of your feedback discussions. People love knowing where they stand. And if you don't promote a culture of accurate, targeted, evidence-based feedback, you're never going to get the most from your people. If you truly believe that your people are your greatest asset, this is where the rubber meets the road. So take those first few steps and set the example for the other leaders in your company.